Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back this month. This is Roadmap to Career Success. We're always excited to see everybody. Just want to give a shout out to everyone that's here. If you want to let us know who's in the meeting, go ahead and drop it down in the chat. Tell us who you are. You could drop an email address if you like. As I always say in these meetings, take this as an opportunity to network. Use this as an opportunity to practice networking with other individuals on the chat. So where are you from? What kind of work are you looking for? What would be helpful for trainings in the future? I mean, that's going to help us out as well. So again, we're really excited to see everyone. Really excited to have Disability Solution come in today to be our guests and our presenters. So just a couple ground rules before we get into it. As we talk about, if you're not speaking, please keep your microphone on mute. Of course, we have access to do that, but we're all adults here, so we want you to take care of that yourselves. And tech, if you've done these trainings before, you know that with the tech piece, sometimes it's challenging to go back and forth and make sure all those are taken care of. So we appreciate you guys doing that. And also videos. If you want to turn your video on, that's fine. We don't have a problem seeing folks. If you do ask a question and you want to turn your mic and your video on so that we can see who you are, that's great. So we're going to give it just a little bit more time, maybe a minute, and then we're going to hand it over. Jessica, Kathy, is there anything, announcements that I missed?
No, I'm good.
I'm good too.
Okay. And as you may have heard earlier, this is being recorded. So just keep in mind that the recording will share this out. This gets shared out with you individuals who've registered already and other individuals who want more information about disability solutions. So just keep that in mind. Okay, appreciate it, Jessica. Thank you for putting that up in the chat. All right, so exciting news. So I have so many stories and some that I haven't had a chance to talk to Keith a whole lot, but I already have a bunch of stories on him. They might not be true, but that's part of creating a friendship, right? So I'm really excited. We've got Kevin McCluskey and we have Keith Meadows. Did I get it?
You got it. You killed it.
Oh man, you're too good. And we've got Keith Meadows. Really excited. If you guys haven't had a chance to hear these two speak before either one of them, you guys are in for a treat. So hang back, listen, enjoy, grab your favorite beverage, probably a soda or coffee, and enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Spencer and team. Much appreciated. So welcome to today's webinar, What Employers Need You to Know. My name is Kevin McCluskey. I'm on your left-hand side. I am the Director of Partnership Development with Disability Solutions. And on your right-hand side, you got Keith Meadows. He's the Hiring Engagement Consultant. And although we have different titles, we definitely do the same thing. And what we do is we manage our employers' clients' efforts in attracting and hiring talent with disabilities, including veterans with disabilities as well. And we do that by managing both local and federal partnerships all around the country, again, to help us find some great talent for the companies that we work for. We also work closely with employers to educate them on the benefits of hiring people with disabilities. We also provide them with some tools to help them both support any possible or potential or current employees that they're working with. So our company is called Disability Solutions. On our logo's in the bottom right there. We are Disability Solutions at Ability Beyond. So Ability Beyond's our parent company. It's based out of Connecticut and New York and has provided services to individuals with disabilities for over 60 years. About 7 or 8 years ago, we created Disability Solutions, and we created it because we saw kind of a lack of information, a lack of motivation for employers to really go out there and recruit and hire people with disabilities. For some reason, they're always kind of scared of this population. When it comes to diversity hiring, disabilities are always usually kept out. So we created Disability Solutions to really help them and guide them, and also build some relationships with wonderful organizations such as the California Voc Rehab. So our motto is changing minds and changing lives. Again, we do a lot of education. So we do a lot of education with employers on, again, really the talent value, the market value, We've used education success stories with them employers to really change their minds, and that then has resulted in the changing of lives of job seekers with disabilities, turning into employees with disabilities for the companies that we work with. One of our greatest products for both the job seeker and the employers is our Career Center. So it's jobs.disabilitytalent.org. All the employers on your screen are the current employers we're working with all across the country. A good amount of them are in your area as well. So again, we provide proactive outreach to the organizations that serve job seekers with disabilities. And hopefully those job leads are getting out to those job seekers so they know some really great roles that are coming through Disability Solutions. And these companies are really wanting to recruit and hire people with disabilities. So if you're not familiar with this website, go on there, click. You can put a free account together. You can get job alerts. You can put your resume on there. Everything is free to a talent partner or a job seeker. All right, so let's get to the meat of the presentation. Again, we work with a lot of employers across the country. So we talk with a lot of HR teams and their hiring managers, and we talk about what sets candidates apart from others. And most of the hiring managers that we talk to are interviewing several people throughout the day. So they're really looking for a candidate that stands out. And Disability Solutions works with these job seekers with disabilities to educate and empower them with some of the best practices and tips we've seen to go from just that candidate who applies to a new hire. So in about 8 years or so, we've hired helped hire about 3,500 job seekers with disabilities, finding employment with those clients that we're working with, employers that we're working with across the country. And when we start working with these hiring managers, they tell us what stands out and who doesn't stand out and why they don't stand out. So we want to make sure that you are going into interviews prepared so you stand out. First things we hear on their end is, the candidate who comes on doesn't really understand what the company does. So we want to make sure you're doing your research on the company, really to show them that you're interested in what they do and you'd be a huge value for their company and their team. Second, we also hear that candidates come in not knowing what job they're actually interviewing for, believe it or not. So if you don't know what the job is, you're definitely not prepared to go in and really knock it out of the park and explain why you're going to be the best candidate for the job. So definitely make sure you know what job you're interviewing for. We also hear job seekers aren't what they call interview or job ready. So when we say interview ready, really means that you're ready to go into the interview again and sell yourself. That again, through your experiences and skills, you're going to hear me say that a lot today, experience and skills. You want to be able to tell them your wonderful skills and experience and why you are the best fit for that role. So you want to be able to relate those skills and experiences to the job you're actually applying for. We also hear that candidates are getting to an interview who are not qualified for the job. With the applicant systems you're going through, it really shouldn't happen that much. That's really that ATS is what am I saying? That computer, that system is really job is to kind of not let not qualified individuals get through there. But before you go ahead and start, researching, applying, and interviewing, really make sure you read the job description and the requirements to make sure, one, that you really want to do the job, and two, that you are qualified for the job. So most of those job descriptions kind of lack some of that day-to-day activities that the job might have, but it definitely will tell you what to expect and the qualifications needed. So if you don't have those qualifications, try not to apply to those roles. If you think it's kind of in the gray area, go ahead. But if you don't have those qualifications or those certificates that you're supposed to have, definitely don't apply to those roles. Lastly, we hear that candidates come in under dress, and they only say you get one first impression. So you make sure you want to look good and look the part. We'll talk about that, in person, and we'll talk about it on video as well, as some of the interviews these days are going virtual. So let's dive into some tips for success for the interview. Know your worth, as I like to say. The first step towards successful employment is really to know your worth. The number one kind of characteristic I see in most job seekers, whether it's a disability or not, is a bit of a lack of confidence. So some job seekers that have some type of disability, they, maybe they've been out of work for a long period of time. Maybe they're trying to get back to work and have worked, part-time or temporary roles, or maybe they just haven't been through a formal interview before. So it's understandably that you might be a little rusty and really trouble selling yourself and those experiences and skills that we talked about. So getting to know your worth really starts with that confidence building. I typically have job seekers start by answering a few common interview questions, such as tell me about yourself. So when I ask you to tell me about yourself, 9 out of 10 times, I usually get something kind of personal, a personal stories that really doesn't tell me much about you as an employee. This information definitely isn't beneficial for the employer to hear. And it's really not beneficial for you to share. Um, and sometimes some of that personal information could raise some yellow or red flags for the employer right off the bat and derail a potentially successful interview. Again, what the interview that the employer wants to hear is, your work experience and your skills and how those benefit that the company and position that you're interviewing for. When I ask you to tell me about yourself, I definitely want to hear a few significant responsibilities and tasks you had with those positions. Again, best relate to the position that you're interviewing for. Confidence also comes from, the comfort of knowledge of knowing who you are as an employee and your experience. Therefore, really important to know your work history. Not just write it on a resume, but really know it and talk about it. Again, related to the job that you're going for. Sometimes we hear, that I was just a secretary, or I was just a waiter, I was just a cashier. Those jobs definitely, I've worked some of those jobs. Those definitely require some multitasking and a lot of interpersonal skills for you to be successful. So really take a deep dive on what you did beyond just that title and explain to the interviewer, again, the skills that you're going to bring to the company. Practice your work history as if you're telling a short story about your life, but it includes your work life, not your personal life. Once you're comfortable with your story, you really can edit it and add in points on why those skills match, again, the job that you're going for. Once again, once you're comfortable knowing your worth, you'll be confident to go in and really have a successful interview. So definitely know your worth. You are worth something. All right, finding the wrong job. When I ask possible or job seekers what kind of job they are looking for or why you're interested in this position, sometimes I get the answer that I just need a job. Although this statement might be true, and you definitely might just need a job to, pay the bills or something like that. It's not just any job that you want to do. You need to really find the right job. So make sure you're setting yourself up for success in your job search. Remember to always apply and interview for jobs that you're qualified for. We talked about earlier, and again, would be successful at, not just any job. We also hear that I'll do anything. Again, trying to get back into the workforce, I'll do anything. I can guarantee you, most likely you won't do anything. There are definitely jobs that I don't want to do. And that thinking can really lead you into a job that you'll leave, or maybe you'll get stuck in an unhealthy work situation. So instead of thinking, you'll do anything, think about what you're going to be interested in doing, what you could be successful at, what are your likes and your strengths. If you don't like working in fast food restaurants, don't apply to any fast food restaurants. If you don't like kids, stay away from daycare, stuff like that. If you have a starting wage requirement that you really need, stay away from those low paying jobs. Whether you really need a job right now or simply looking maybe for a career change, make sure you're targeting those right jobs in industries that match your qualifications. And again, you would like to do that job. If you're making a career change, make sure you know how and can confidently explain why you're making that change and what you have to offer to that new field. Again, make sure that those skills and experiences match that position in that company. If you can explain, why you want to do that career change and you think you'd be a good fit for that role, you definitely be a good fit. But if you can't, there's definitely someone else who can. So now that you know how to find the wrong job, let's find the right job. Again, so what do you really want to do? What are you good at? What have you done in the past that interests you? Do you hold any certificates or licenses or have gone through some trainings? I myself personally, over 25 years or so, I always look for companies where I could somehow make people better and make their lives better, which is kind of a broad statement, right? But I've been able to work for and find companies that support that goal in my work life. Between college and now, I've worked for a few companies, whether it was selling entertainment to marketing at events in a large city, to working with foster kids, to the wonderful job that I have now. I picked up many different skills and experiences to sell myself to employers that I'm interested in working for. So again, what are your skills and experiences, and what are you going to bring to the company? Very important. Again, you should always be able to walk into an interview and tell the employer what those experiences and skills are and how you're going to bring it to the company. Again, sell them on why you're going to be the great fit. Also don't go in and say oh, I want to give this job a try, or I think I'd be good at this. That's kind of a huge turnoff for employers looking to invest in a new employee. So if you're making that career change, make sure you're comfortable saying, hey, I got these skills and I can bring it to this role. So one of our clients is Pepsi that we work with, and it sounds maybe cool and fun to work for a company like Pepsi, but those jobs are very physically challenging. They require heavy lifting at times. So the right fit really isn't someone who likes to drink Pepsi, which I've heard before. It really needs to be someone who's comfortable working in a warehouse environment with a physically demanding job, moving cases of Pepsi around in a warehouse. We also work with several call centers, so if you're not comfortable sitting in a cubicle and talking on the phone all day, it's definitely not going to be a good fit for you. Finally, I also tell job seekers it's really not what the company can do for you, but it's what you can do for the company. So I often talk to candidates who are talking about, the benefits they want and, how they need money to provide for their family and pay the bills, which is all good, all perfectly. But again, you're trying to sell yourself on how you're going to be a good fit for that company. I always say also that you are interviewing the company yourself, so you want to make sure it's a good fit. But before that, you got to make sure you are selling yourself as the best candidate for the job if they're going to bring you onto the team. All right, so tips to get that interview. Things we'll go over in a second. I'll have Keith kick us off with networking and resources in a second. So first, network resources, tap into your community partners and all the resources out there, LinkedIn, whatnot. Research, again, looking for that right job. Looking for a job is almost a part-time or full-time job already. So you got to take that time to find those good jobs. We're going to go over applications, some hurdles you can get over by using some of our tips. We'll touch on social media a little bit. You don't want to lose the job before getting the job, especially these days. We'll quickly go over resumes and how to revisit and revamp them for each job that you're going for. And I think overall, just be realistic. You have some skills and experiences. Make sure you're going for the right jobs that fit those backgrounds, and don't kind of shoot some jobs that are really not a good fit for you. So Keith, I'll turn it over to you for networking and research.
Thank you, Kevin. Please chug a big glass of water for all those words. As Kevin mentioned, we're going to walk you through each of those sections of the job search, and we'll start with networking and research. So we all know that looking for a job can be overwhelming and really difficult to know where to start. But we want you to really just take a step back and decide what industry you would like to work in first. And that's going to help you significantly narrow down your search. I don't know what I want to do. If you said that statement or heard that statement, that won't work for you. And so we encourage you to just think about what you're good at. And if you're struggling to come up with that, which some of us do from time to time, ask your friends, your family, previous coworkers, previous bosses, what they think that your strengths are and what you're good at. And that could really help you narrow it down. But if we're being honest today, the cold, hard reality of today's world is that a lot of people get a job because they know someone who already works for the company that they're interested in. And so, once you've picked that industry that you want to be in, whether that's restaurants, whether that's daycare, as kind of Kevin was talking about, whether that's engineering, whether that's, being a scientist, whatever that is, we want you to kind of take a mental inventory of where your friends and family members work at and see if there's a company that they already work at that kind of gels with your interests. Is that going to work every time? Absolutely not. And in a lot of cases, you're still going to have to go through the same exact application process and interview process as everyone else. But having someone inside the company to potentially help and refer you can be the difference maker, as most of us on this webinar have seen. But what if you don't know anybody who works at a company you're interested in? Well, the short answer is find somebody. So you need to start networking, which is difficult to do in a pandemic, right? But what we can do is we can make connections on LinkedIn. We can make digital connections via email or maybe phone calls. Maybe we can go to virtual career fairs. When things settle down and vaccines become more prevalent, maybe we can attend open houses and things of that nature. You'd actually be surprised how many people will be receptive and helpful if you put forth effort, because most job seekers will not put forth effort. So you can set yourself apart by just taking a few steps. Now, having that friend or family member helping you from the inside doesn't excuse you from doing research. And what do we mean by research? I'm not talking that you need to have 10 pages worth of data on a company and be able to analyze their profit and loss statement and ferret back facts and anything like that. But the number one complaint from hiring managers that Kevin touched on is that job seekers have absolutely no knowledge of the company or the position that they're interviewing for. And so if we think about that for a second, I'm guessing some of us on this webinar are probably guilty of that. If you want to work for a company, you need to know why, because I can guarantee you that that company will 100% ask you why. And so you can just use the good old Google searches, reading articles. And what you're looking for is you're going to try to find some values that you have in common with the company. And being able to write those down and rehearse those and being able to tell that company what values you share is going to arm you with ammunition where you can set yourself apart from other applicants. Because I can tell you what most people say to that question, what brings you to this company? Or why did you apply to this company? Most people just say, oh, I really like your company. It's cool. And those are real answers. Kevin and I talk to hiring managers all across the country pretty regularly, and those are real answers. And that's not going to get you anywhere, because everyone else is saying it. And so do a little bit of research, and you're able to set yourself apart. So the next step in the process, we've identified what industry you will want to be in. We've networked or researched the company, and you may have a couple of companies in mind. Now we get to apply. And we want to encourage you to make sure that you apply for the right jobs, not all of the jobs. Kevin and I have seen this quite frequently, and it's pretty common. So let's say maybe you're unemployed and you set a goal where you want to apply to 20 jobs a day. And so that's what you do for maybe a week or 2 weeks. And then you just kind of sit back and wait to see who emails or calls to set up an interview. And when they do, then you do some quick research on the company and maybe just look at the job title. That is a terrible way to job search, especially if you're not doing any research whatsoever and you're just, firing off applications. You're wasting your time, you're wasting the company's time. So know the company you want to work for, and also know the duties of the job that you're applying for. And you'll also need a customized resume for each and every job that you apply for. Don't get scared, but we'll get into a little bit more detail on that here in a bit. So we're applying, and we're about to click submit on our application. Next, we go up against an applicant tracking system, or an ATS for short. And so this is essentially a fancy computer that you go up against immediately. Most companies have these in place, ATSs. And their job is really to filter out job seekers automatically based on their applications and resumes. And so you may be asking, well, how can I get past this computer? We've got a few easy steps here to give you the best chance of getting past that computer and closer to speaking to an actual human about your skill set, where most of us shine. So first, you got to match your resume to the job description. You'll hear that several times today. So you'll need to customize your resume for every single job that you apply for. And you can do that by putting keywords and phrases from that job description into your resume. And, it's important that you have done those, or you've fulfilled those actions before you're putting them in your resume. You don't want to say that you've got 4 years of Salesforce experience if you don't have that experience. But, those bullet points and qualifications that match up, incorporate those in your resume. And we've seen so many qualified people knocked out of the application process because they want to go too fast or they don't read each question and they knock themselves out with a silly mistake. And a silly mistake example would be, if you're doing the application and it says, are you 18 years of age or older? And it's yes or no. And you're going fast and you accidentally hit no and you're over 18. Well, congratulations, you just kicked yourself out of the process immediately. And most companies will actually make you wait up to 6 months to reapply after an unsuccessful application. And that would be the definition of an unsuccessful application. So that takes us to the online assessment. So most companies have quizzes attached to applications. We've all kind of seen them, right? But we're going to look at the question on the screen as an example of one of those. So we can look at that. It says, how often do you do great work? Pretty common question on a lot of these quizzes. And if you look at those answers, how would you answer? The majority of people are actually going to pick B most of the time, right? We're being modest, we're being truthful. But the trick is with most companies' quizzes, answer A is going to get you the most points. And that is the trick to nearly all of these quizzes. And I put a caveat, nearly all, especially the multiple choice, but answering to the extremes is going to get you more points than being humble. So if it's one of these multiple choice questions that have answers that range from always to never and have different answers in between that aren't as strong, you're better off picking one of those that are the strongest, like always or never, versus one of those ones in the middle. And, as we mentioned, most companies these days are going to have you complete an online quiz during that process. Some are really long, some are really hard, but what they really are, if you distill them down, they're another way that you can be kicked out of the process before speaking to a human if we don't take them seriously enough. And so we touched on resumes and we told you if you don't have the keywords that match the job description, that right there is one way that companies screen you out of the process. This right here, these quizzes, that's another way that businesses narrow down the pool of applicants immediately. And so our number one tip here is to make sure that you're completing that quiz in a quiet and distraction-free environment. That seems like common sense, right? But it's actually one of the top reasons why people who are qualified for jobs get knocked out of the process. It's the 21st century, too many things going on at the same time. We're checking our phones, we're trying to apply, not reading the question, just trying to hurry through it and speed through it so that we've got it done and we've checked that off our list of things to do for the day. If you do that, that's a recipe for an early exit from a lot of job applications. Also, many candidates fail these quizzes because they try to do them on their phone. Now, for some companies, phone applications and assessments work perfectly fine. However, as a general best practice, a lot of companies aren't there yet. So you want to try to use a laptop or a desktop or one of those dreaded CPUs that's currently hopefully up to date on software in a distraction-free environment. And so just to go back on the quizzes, how do they grade them? How do companies decide who goes forward and who doesn't? They're actually going to assign you a certain amount of points per answer, and then they're going to add them up at the end. Easy. So if your score is above what they have previously determined the bar to be, then you get to move forward. And if not, then you get that dreaded rejection email, or maybe you don't even get an email at all. So each quiz is different. What works for one may not work for others, but the one on your screen is pretty common. These types of questions are really common. And so just something to keep in mind here. And that takes us to self-disclosure. So at some point during that application, especially if a company is a federal contractor, which a lot of big companies are, most big companies actually, it's pretty likely you're going to get a question that asks if you have a disability or not. And we just want to touch on why you get asked that question and why you should feel comfortable answering yes if you're a person with a disability. So first, the why. You're getting that question because the company you're applying for is a federal contractor, which means that they do business with the U.S. government. And so any business that works with the government is required to have a workforce that looks like the American population. So long story short, companies want and need to hire people with disabilities. If they don't, they could be audited, they could be fined large amounts of money, get a lot of negative press from the government agency, the OFCCP. And so a lot of people think that by checking that yes on the application, that it's going to be used against you in the hiring process. That is a myth and not true at all. And we can tell you that because it's actually almost impossible to get because we've tried. And that is information that is locked down, and usually one person, the chief diversity officer of the company, even has access to it. So it is not tied to any personnel files, or nobody has access to it. So checking yes will have no impact on whether you get that job, but checking yes can help people with disabilities as a whole. So if companies aren't hiring enough people with disabilities, it will push them, gently nudge them to step it up. If they've got a lot of people with disabilities applying and fewer getting hired, guess what? That company can face those audits and the fines from the government and that negative press. But at the end of the day, when you get that question, it's a personal choice. And so you do you. If you want to check yes, great. We want you to be comfortable with that, but you can also select one of the other selections as well. And a real quick side note here, social media. Everybody's got social media accounts, right? 99% of us. And they can actually make or break you. I think we all know that on some level, right? But some of us still get lulled to sleep, and we think that kind of what we say and post is mostly private. Maybe our friends and family could see it, but we don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. So I encourage you, before you even begin your job search, to check the information that we're about to go over, because if you don't know, hiring managers can and probably will view your social media accounts. And we could kind of go on a different tangent of whether this is ethical or what the rationale might be. Most will deny it, but some do. And so this is why it's important to stay away from controversy. We want you to check your privacy settings before you begin your search. Make sure that your profile photos are not of something obscene. That's a real quick win right there. Make sure your tweets, posts, blog posts, don't paint you in a negative way from an employer standpoint if they were to simply type in your name and check. Another great tip here is to have someone you're not currently connected with on your social media accounts. From a public standpoint, have them check that and see if there's anything potentially negative or alarming that they see from an employer's perspective. And if you still don't think employers check social media, I would just invite you to do a quick Google search. You can see the stories of all the many employees who have been terminated for social media mistakes or who haven't gotten a job because of social media mistakes. It's a deep rabbit hole that you can go down, but just know that it exists, and please don't jump down that rabbit hole. The moral of the story is make sure you know what's out there on your pages and don't knock yourself out of contention for a job just because one of these you made one of these social media mistakes. All right, that brings us to resumes. Hot topic, right? Resumes are always scary to the majority of people. If you think about it, how do you fit your whole life's work onto a sheet of paper that lets an employer know you're the right person for the job? And you're not alone. A lot of us struggle with resumes, and there's probably 1,000 different ways that you can make one. So we're not here to tell you what exactly is 100% correct or what is 100% wrong, but we do want to give you some tips that can give you the best chance to get an interview and get to an interview stage where you can talk to an actual human, which is where most of us excel. So the first thing we need to understand is how most companies use resumes. So when you click that submit button, companies use that applicant tracking system, or the ATS that I told you about. I call it a fancy computer. And what it does is it'll scan your resume, and it will essentially sort you as a yes or a no based on those matching keywords between your resume and the job description. And so that right there is the secret to resumes and not getting kicked out because of your resume. So to make it past the computer, your resume needs to closely match the job description because that's who they're looking for, right? And that's where most of us go wrong. To be successful with your resume, customize it for each and every job that you apply for. You need to change that each time and put those keywords from the job description that you're interested in applying for into your resume. If you've ever applied for a job and never heard back, this is one of the most common reasons why. A couple of tools you can use. We're not affiliated with this company at all, but this is maybe we can pop it in the chat here. It's called JobScan, JOBSCAN.co. It's not .com. They just leave off the end. But that actually has some free resources where that's what they do. They will match up your resume with the job description that you're interested in applying for and tell you what you have in common. There's a certain amount of those that you can do for free before you enter kind of their, premium level. But if you're doing a couple and want to kind of get the knack of it and figure out how to do it, that's a great resource. Another old school way is to print the job description that you're going to apply for, take out a classic highlighter and just highlight what you have in common with your work skills, what you have done, and then put those in your resume. Another example we mentioned is, let's say that, 4 years of daycare experience. And if you're going for a daycare position and that's what they're looking for and you've done that, make sure that you put that in. Because if it's a computer going up against, you stand a much better shot of getting past that phrase. Also, another one here, you need to know what's on your resume. Sometimes people have friends and family that make a resume for them, and they have no idea what's on it. And so you need to know your work history, what you did, when you did it, and be able to talk about what skills you have. And also, another point here is if you're using the same resume for every single job, which we've seen, and some people have been using the same resume for the last 10 years without updating it and, no current work history. That is probably the reason why the employer is passing on you. That's probably why you're not getting callbacks. That's probably why you're not getting to that next stage. And so I'll throw it back to Kevin. He's going to walk you through some interview strategies, how to answer some of those really, really tough questions that we all get during interviews that kind of, make our deer in headlights look.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Now you get a drink of water. All right, so now you know what type of employment and employer you're looking for. You possibly cleaned up your social media. You found some few dream jobs. Let's say you applied and somehow you made it through those pesky online assessments and you landed the interview. So let's take it to the next level and get that job. One of the best interview tips I've ever heard is think of every question you're being asked as, why should I hire you? So every question that comes out is really, why should I hire you? If that's the case, every answer you give should again provide the hiring manager with an answer of why you're going to be the best candidate. A great way to answer questions such as this is, tell me about yourself or why you're interested in this position is using the set structure, skills, experience, and time. As we've been reinforcing throughout this presentation, you want to continue to discuss your skills and experience, which also includes the time you spent on some of those jobs. Remembering the set structure will help you hit on all three parts when explaining why you are a great hire. So as we discussed a bit earlier, the first question I typically ask is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I often hear information that really isn't any of my business and doesn't tell me about the individual as a potential employee. Again, employers don't want to hear your personal stories. They want to hear your favorite type of food, maybe when you get the job later on. They really want to hear, again, those skills and experiences and your work ethic and what you're going to bring to the company. So remember, you're always selling yourself as an employee. Put yourself on the other end of the table and think about how some of those personal information and comments could be heard. If I have 3 kids, it could sound like, oh, this person might call out a lot if their kids get sick. Again, tell me about yourself as an opportunity to sell yourself as an employee. This moment is a perfect time to tell that short story we talked about before of your employment by hitting on your skills, your experience, and the time you were there. A great way to end each question is with a wrap-up line as well. So a lot of people have a tough time ending their answer. So always wrap it up with, that's why I think I'd be a good fit for this role. Also remember to summarize and highlight information that connects to the current position you are interested in. A great answer for a warehouse role is, in my past role as a warehouse associate at X company, I was in charge of pulling orders up to 40 pounds and loading it onto the truck in a certain amount of time. I know this role I'm going for requires a lot of lifting and getting orders out as well. So with my 5 years of experience in that role, I know I have the skills and experience to be successful in this company. Again, it's a quick answer, but it provides the person interviewing you with skills and experience and how you're going to be a good fit for the job that you're interviewing for. And we can compare that one to a typical one I hear for warehouse jobs is, I'm 39 years old. I worked in warehouses my whole life. I really enjoy it. And I just really need a job at the moment. So I think I'd be a good fit for your company. That's not really that great. So you want to constantly, quote unquote, brag about your skills and experience with every answer. And again, tell them why they should hire you. Another question we get is, why are you interested in this position or the company? As mentioned, we hear employers' frustrations that the candidates really know little or nothing about the job or the company. So again, another great opportunity to sell yourself and show the company how prepared and serious you are about this job. Again, when speaking to job seekers interested in working for Pepsi, I always hear, 9 out of 10 times that I really like to drink Pepsi, so it'd be great to work there. When I was really searching for an answer, was something that they knew about Pepsi and attracted them to the company. I want to hear their, again, experience and skills and how it relates to the role. If it's a customer service role and you're one of those cashiers or waiters that we talked about earlier, address that you had 5 to 10 years of making the customer experience the best for the store or the restaurant, and then tell them what you enjoyed most about that job. Again, and how you're going to bring it to their company. These examples really show the hiring manager the type of employee you're going to be, so you want to make it a great example and sell. Finally, use this as an opportunity to compliment the company one more time and bring it back to the sell of why you're going to be the best candidate for their company. All right, so as Keith mentioned, we've all been in those interviews where we have the deer in headlights when we get asked these questions that really make us hesitate. And these tough questions are behavioral-based questions, such as, what is your greatest weakness? Tell me about a time you received some criticism. Tell me about a time you took the initiative. These behavioral-based questions are really designed to find out how you're going to respond in different work situations with your previous experience. Today, we're going to empower you with some of these skills to answer them, utilizing what we believe is the best answer to impress the employers that you're going for. It's the STAR method. So if you haven't heard of the STAR method, I definitely suggest you practice it. Think of your answers. All these questions are usually the same. So if you practice your answers and think about those situations you were in and structure it with using the STAR method, you're going to have a very, very successful interview. So let's take a look at it. The S stands for situation. So here you're going to, set the scene. What is the background of the story? Basically, what was your job or the company you were working out? T is the task. So that task that needed to be completed. Here you're going to want to describe what you or someone needed to do. Again, maybe you were in a warehouse and you had to load a truck by a certain amount of time, or maybe you had to deal with a customer complaint. What was that task? The A stands for action. What did you do to resolve that issue and complete the task? Maybe you came up with a better solution to load the truck faster. Maybe you took action and helped that customer not be upset. What did you do? And here you really want to make sure your answers and examples are positive ones. We've heard stories where they're telling a really good story and there's not a great ending. And you're like, why'd you use that as an example? That's not really good. So remember, always have a positive example and a positive outcome. We often hear also that telling your when you tell the hiring manager that you went to your manager at the time to tell them to solve or to help you solve the issue. We always hear that. So, tell me about a time you resolved an issue and they tell me a story and it's really just going to the manager and having them solve the issue. We want to hear how you're solving the issue, not the manager. And then the R is for result. So what happened as a result? Again, make sure there's an outcome and make sure that outcome is a positive one. So back to the warehouse example, maybe you and your team were able to load the truck and get it out to delivery before the deadline. Therefore, you satisfy the customer's request. Or if you're dealing with an upset customer, a good example is I was able to calm down the customer and resolve her issue, and she left happy. So a real quick review: S is for situation, T is for the tasks, what needed to be completed. A, what actions did you take to resolve the problem? And R is that positive result. So when answering behavioral-based questions, having the STAR method in your head as you walk through the answer to the question is really a great way to paint a perfect story for your interview. Remember to think your answers as little short stories you're retelling, utilizing the STAR method. And also, people interviewing you typically have a interview guide that they're following, looking for the STAR method. So they'll put your answer right in there and they'll be happy with it. A couple tips for the STAR method: make sure you're using real stories. I'm not telling you lies here. You lived through this experience, and it definitely should come off as, again, that short story you're telling. You want to paint a picture, again, how you took that negative situation, you turned into a positive one. Again, employers want to hear that you were the one who helped with that positive outcome, not a manager. Another great example is keep it brief, keep it relevant, rather than rambling on. And something that job seekers do is list everything they've ever done. I'm hardworking, I'm a positive person, I'm on time. I get that a lot. You don't want to just list things. You want to paint a picture. You really want to stand out and not lose their attention. It happens to me sometimes when someone just goes rambling on in an answer and I even forgot what I asked them. And I'm like, where's the answer in here? So again, make it brief and make it relevant and use that STAR method. Here are a few examples on not to get hired. Again, interview process is really a situation where it's going to help them find the best role. The interview questions are really tests on how you're going to respond in those different situations and why they should hire you. So the STAR method is a proven way to give the best answer that the employer is looking for. So let's say the employers really want answers with substance first, not one sentence answers that we typically hear that don't provide an actual answer. We all also hear, I never make mistakes. Of course you do. We're all human. We all make mistakes. You made a mistake in the past. So the real focus with this question is, how did you learn from that past mistake? Just as you made a mistake, you've had the pleasure of working with either a difficult coworker like Keith or encountered a difficult customer. So here you want to explain how that difficult coworker or difficult customer was, and then explain how you dealt with that and how you created that positive ending. A surefire example not to get hired is also telling the employer that you go to the boss every time that there's an issue. I talked about that earlier, but we hear it all the time that I went to a manager and the manager fixed the problem for me. Employers and managers really want people who are able to handle some of those issues themselves. They can problem solve those issues. As we mentioned earlier, please don't sell yourself short and just say that you were just a waiter or just a cashier or just something else. Again, no matter what the job was or the company, your job was definitely important and you did have many tasks. So again, use those jobs and those skills to talk about how those skills, are a right fit for the job and the company that you're going for. Again, stay away from that personal information. And finally, it's not what the company could do for you, it's what you could do for the company. So throughout the interview, a great way to answer those questions is, again, with those skills and experience, I believe I'm going to be a good fit for these positions. So as you can see, we're repeating a lot of these things, but these are common mistakes you made. So you want to make sure you're able to end any answer that you have with that wrap-up sentence. So always use that. This is why I think I would be a good fit for that position. All right, so here are some answers that will get you hired. Talk about a mistake you made in the past, but make sure that that mistake is a little enough. It's not a huge problem, and it's one you learn from to become a better worker. A great example I typically use is, one of those tiny mistakes you made when you were a new employee at a new company, because that's really understandable, right? You're learning the new tasks, and your employer will understand that learning curve as long as you finish with a positive example. Not, I was in a warehouse and I bumped into a lot of product and broke all the product and everyone was mad at me. Again, answers I've heard before. When talking about that difficult customer or coworker, make sure you're not solving the issue, again, by going to your manager. again, working with a coworker, a difficult coworker, a difficult customer, which is a typical question you're going to get. Good keywords are I kept calm and I listened before I made a decision. And again, talk about that experience and how it's going to relate to the position you're going for. And then wrap up your answers with that wrap up line again. And then always remember to compliment the company that you're working for again. So Keith, let's take some examples and go through them. Some good and bad questions.
Excellent, thank you. So now we've went over some of those questions, and we're going to look at some answers, some good answers and some bad answers. And so our first question is, tell us about a time that you received criticism at work. We've got a couple of examples. I've never been criticized at work, and I do good work, both of which are real answers that we have heard more than once. And to be perfectly frank, this is what everyone says, or a good percentage of people. These questions throw us off, so we, answer in, a couple of words, and that's not what the employer is looking for. So those answers are bad because they're cop-out answers. If you think back, everybody has been criticized before, right? But what the employer is really getting at with this specific question is, if you get criticized at this job, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to be, in the group that adapts and learns from it, or are you going to be a person who kind of flies off the handle and is a problem for them? So these answers right here won't get you anywhere. But we'll look at a better example. And so this answer follows SAR. So tell us about a time you received criticism at work. Well, when I was a cashier at a convenience store 2 years ago as my first week on the job, and I left one day without doing the side work that needed to be done before leaving, my boss let me know that on my next shift, and I made sure it was a part of my regular routine, and it didn't happen again. So that one does follow STAR, and it provides a lot more in the way of details to that interviewer. Ends in that nice, happy way that Kevin told you about. That shows that the person can take criticism, learn from it, and get better, which is what an employer wants to hear. And here's the truth. All companies are going to ask versions of these types of questions. Like, it's uncanny, but they all have, the same questions. They'll center on criticism or, the ones we're about to go through. And most of us have never practiced these in our life. How many times have you ever been asked, tell me about a time you were criticized in your real life? Probably zero if it, isn't in an interview setting. And so it's important that you can actually write down these questions and rehearse your answers. Write down what you would like to say. Practice them, rehearse them, even if you've got a job, because you can go through and be prepared when companies ask these questions. We're cutting it tight on time, but we've got a couple more examples here of questions. And so, I think Kevin is moving me up to angry customer. If you want to go back to the one before that, Kevin, we'll show them a bad example.
Oh, that was a bad example. There we go.
All right, there we go. And so if you're going for customer service, you probably heard this before. Tell me about a time where you had to deal with an upset customer. And so the example on your screen is, I had to deal with an upset customers all the time. When I worked for the supermarket, people are crazy, man. I just stayed away as much as possible, and I called for a manager if they cornered me. I didn't like that job, so I left. So that's really bad, all right? It's a real answer. And what it does is it shows you that you are a person that runs from customers and you don't really care about solving problems. So you're a person who lets a manager or a supervisor deal with everything, as Kevin mentioned. That's a big no-no. So what the company's looking for, they're looking to hire a difference maker and a problem solver. And so if you're giving them an answer like this, you're telling them that, this clearly isn't the job for you. So we'll show you a good example here, and then I'll have Kevin wrap us up. So tell us about a time where you had to deal with an upset customer. Here's a better example. When I worked for this restaurant, customer service was extremely important. Customer received the wrong food, started screaming at me. I stayed calm, listened to her complaint, offered an apology, and got her the right order. She actually apologized to me for yelling and left a very satisfied customer who came back every week. Once again, use the star, nice happy ending, specific when you worked and where, what the issue was, and what you did to make it better. All you're going to do is inject your personal details. So where you worked, what the situation was that you had to deal with, how you solved it. And, you know, as we mentioned, you can write those down, write down your answers and just practice, rehearse them. Any employer is probably going to ask you versions of these. Kevin, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, sir. So real quick, I know a lot of us are doing video interviews these days. So follow these like 6 tips here. Preparation, right? Treat a virtual interview as if you were actually interviewing in person. Familiarize yourself with the interviewer and his or her background. Don't forget to bring questions. I always like at least 1 or 2 questions. Technology, definitely test it. You know, spend some time prior to the interview to make sure your audio, your internet, and camera settings are all working properly. Attire is one that most frequently overlooked doing video interview tips. Even though an online interview usually means the interview won't see anything from the waist down, it doesn't mean you should only address the upper half of your body, which we've seen. Body language, sit up straight with good posture. Pay attention to where you're looking. Look at the camera as often as possible, especially when speaking. Try to get that speaker view so you're actually looking at the individual and making some eye contact. Punctuality, arrive early, approximately 10 minutes if possible. Again, there's always going to be some issues, so make sure you're on, ready, and 10 minutes prior to the actual interview. Being late is never a good way to kick it off. I'm going to skip through this for a bit. And again, we have our Career Center, so please visit us. We'll share that information with Spencer and the team as well that he'll share with you. And we definitely want to make sure we have time to answer some questions that you might have. I believe Keith has been answering them throughout, but if not, you know, take yourself off mute or we'll take you off mute and we'll be happy to help you with any questions.
I would love to take credit for all the answering going on, but it was not me.
I'll give you guys both credit. You both did a great job. That's what I was saying on the chat. I think you've done a presentation or 2 before, right?
We've done a few, yep.
First
You
time.
guys are on point. Appreciate it. There you go. Man, you guys are good together. You roll right off of one another. So it's getting close to 2 o'clock. So if folks need to leave, we understand that. If there are questions though, let's go ahead and take some time. We can stay here for a little bit longer if you have those questions.
So Spencer, the only question I saw come through on the chat, I'm not sure if Rachel saw some, I had to step out for a minute, was I think it was when you were talking about how to answer questions like behavioral questions or using STAR technique, was what do you think about using an achievement instead of an employment experience?
Yeah, I think it's okay, especially we work with a lot of, you know, high school transitioning students or college that have that really great experience to go off of. So if the achievement you're talking about can be related to the job, I say definitely go for it. You know, a typical question I've been hearing lately is, in the last 3 to 5 years, tell me what was your greatest achievement. So, you know, as long as if it's not, you know, like I learned how to hit a golf ball 300 feet or something like that, as long as it's kind of work related, definitely use it. You know, anything you did as an achievement is good. Any volunteer work, that is all relevant as long as it's really showing how you are as a person and a great employee.
And I would add employment first, probably achievement second, and then maybe volunteer work third is the order of what employers are looking for. So if you're going for a job, they definitely are looking for that employment experience. If you don't have that, if it's your first job, definitely work in some of the achievements and of the volunteer work and how it relates to the position.
And I'd say the first way to not answer that, we hear this a lot, is like, oh, I don't really have much experience doing that, but this is what I did. So never go negative. Just keep it, oh yeah, you know, like for that example, I had this great thing happen to me, and talk about the achievement rather than going negative first, which usually happens in a lot of interviews.
Great, that's all the questions I have from the chat that weren't answered. Spencer, do you want to take it from here, or does anyone want to unmute themselves to answer or to ask a question live?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is great. I mean, being a part of this training with you guys, I feel like what we're really learning is how to be a real person with an employer, how to come off as the way, like you said, what employers want to see. So this is great. I appreciate it. I know information that you guys brought, you kind of just allowed us to level on some of the things that we know. And that's always great for us to continue learning these things. So I appreciate the examples. I hope the next time we have you guys on here, we can get some more of those really ridiculous examples. I don't know how many times I've sat in an interview. You guys know what I'm talking about when you hear them. You're like, did you just say that?
Yep.
Where are we? Am I being filmed right now? Who is it? Who's coming out with, what is that old show that they used to come out with the cameras and get, never mind.
Candid camera.
But yeah, appreciate it. There you go, candid camera.
practice
Yeah, you went a little
it.
farther back than I did. All right, well, this is great. So it doesn't look like we have anyone that's gonna jump up. We did record this, so this information will be available. I'm excited. I'm really excited to have you guys come on. If folks, if you don't have Keith and Kevin's information, please reach out to us. We want to make sure that we're connecting everybody we can with these two, because they're doing some really big things. And if you're on LinkedIn, I know for a fact that Kevin and Keith are on LinkedIn, and Keith and I are new connects. So I've got a lot more stories that we're going to be trying to share across LinkedIn, appropriate, so that when I apply for that next job, I'm not going to.
Quick question. Did you say you will be sending out the recording, or do we have to contact you?
You want that, Jess?
Got to find the mute button. Had to be one of those, right? So yes, I will be sending out the recording as soon as it processes, probably tomorrow, and it will go out to anyone who registered on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm sorry, not on LinkedIn, Eventbrite. I always mix those two up.
We are big fans of LinkedIn in this committee, so we'll keep pumping that thing. Well, I appreciate you both being here. I know you guys are busy. You're running all over doing programs across the nation. I love seeing the webinars that you guys are putting out there, the resources. Keep doing that, because that's making a huge difference in the impact and the inclusion for those individuals that we partner with. Yeah, I'm excited. You guys, you know how I am. I get really excited about this stuff, but looking forward to continuing to connect, and appreciate everybody for being here. Again, if you're here and you enjoyed what we were able to present today, come back, share this information, get this out to the job seekers that you're working with, and make sure that we get these out to folks and help them find gainful employment.